If you take a look at the current landscape of horror games and general internet horror, a lot of it can feel more or less the same. It's very common to see endless viral clips of content creators screaming at the latest horror game, and when you check out these games to play them for yourself, most of them feel very copy and pasted. Most of them follow the same gameplay loop and feel like they're here just to give streamers viral clips. Recently, even horror content on the internet outside of games can feel very formulaic as well, with the same vibes and recycled approach showing up in most of them. So how did we get here? I believe one kinda overlooked game is responsible for shaping most of the current landscape of internet horror, and not only did it change how horror games are made, it changed how we share fear online. Horror games have been around for over 40 years now, starting as a super niche genre that didn't see too much attention or sales in the 80s and early 90s. This was probably because of how games looked and played during the time. I mean, it's really hard to get people excited for your horror game when it looks like this. Once games started to evolve into the 3D realm and allow for more perspectives, that's when we would see horror games start to shine and actually become pretty scary. Most people consider the 6th generation of console, or the PS2 original Xbox generation, to be the golden age of horror games, and I completely agree. Due to more advanced hardware and tools, developers were able to play with new perspectives, lighting, and sound in order to create some eerie settings, leading to this generation birthing dozens of classic horror games that for the first time were actually scary. During this era, you would sit in your dark room in front of your big ass box TV and have little to no knowledge about the scary game you're about to play outside of what the case tells you. There were no popular video guides or let's plays on the internet to show you what you were getting into. It was simply a one-on-one meeting with you and the atmosphere the developer gave you. This type of immersion and innovation led to some unforgettable experiences for people, especially when developers would use these tools to make you feel really vulnerable and play creative tricks on you.
You like Castlevania, don't you? You enjoy role-playing games. I see that you enjoy Konami games.
Fucking Psycho Mantis is gonna know that you're playing Leisure Suit Larry. There was one horror game that was released in 2005 during the last real year of this generation, and while it's considered one of the best games ever, it had some unforeseen effects on its own genre. I'm not even going to waste time talking about what this game is or why it's so great, because I need to get to what this video is actually about. Just stay with me, I promise this will all make sense. I know I sound like the damn gamer history channel right now. A lot of the horror games from the PS2 era had weapons or a way to fight back in them. However, in most cases, they were almost completely useless, super clunky, and just there as a means to fluff up the gameplay. This never really took away from any of the greats from this era, as combat wasn't the main focus, the atmosphere and subtle ways to scare you were. Did you guys just see that? What the fuck? Resident Evil 4 changed this dramatically, making gunplay and combat the centerpiece of the gameplay. This isn't to say Resident Evil 4 didn't succeed in atmosphere, as it definitely did, but it helped show other developers that you can integrate fast-paced action gameplay into your survival horror game and have it appeal to a wider audience and be a critical success. This helped too. With the new generation of consoles releasing shortly after RE4's success, higher budgets and expectations for games led to every horror developer wanting so desperately to make the next Resident Evil 4. With online video platforms being created to review and showcase games to the general public, horror developers focus more so on creating the most flashy, eye-catching games possible. Mix this all together and we would have the misfortune of experiencing one of the most controversial eras of horror games, with most developers sacrificing atmosphere and immersion for over-the-top action gameplay. Even already established horror franchises fell into this pit of making these combat-driven, power fantasy-type horror games. There were some genuinely good games to come out of this era, but none of them gave you the same immersed and vulnerable feeling as the previous generations of classics did. I mean, is this really scary? By the end of the 2000s, during the height of this style of horror, a small Swedish indie studio titled Frictional Games was founded by Thomas Grip and Jens Nielsen, taking much inspiration from the golden era of horror with the intent to re-nurture atmosphere and subtle terror back into the scene. This 5-person team would release a trilogy of shorter PC horror games titled Penumbra as their first ever project from 2007 to 2008. And while the game still had elements of action and combat, it was clear the team was stepping in the right direction. The Penumbra trilogy was made using the HPL engine, which was a game engine created by Frictional Games themselves to better cater to their development choices. The trilogy had an excellent dreary atmosphere, using very little lighting that really made you feel suffocated in the darkness. The sound design is really where the team excelled though, with the sounds of your feet echoing through the halls being the only thing accompanying you, contrasted with these perfect droning ambient sounds that would loop during tense situations. Like I mentioned, the gameplay did have elements of combat, but the controls for things like simply swinging a hammer were intentionally complicated to depower you in a way, and nudge you into finding different approaches like stealth or avoiding areas altogether. Instead of feeling like a fearless badass, the game would make you feel a lot more awkward and weak, which was a lot more relatable because I mean, look at you. The gameplay instead focused on things like puzzle solving, exploring the environment, light platforming, and a physics-based mechanic where you could pick up and interact with anything in the environment. This mechanic even extended to manually having to open cabinets and doors at your own pace, which added so much to the immersion. And while Penumbra was a step in the right direction, it wasn't until Frictional's second project that we would see them use everything we've talked about so far and cause a massive shift in not only horror games, but horror content on the internet as well. Frictional Games would release their second major project titled Amnesia: The Dark Descent on September 8th, 2010. They developed the game using their HPL engine that they developed Penumbra with, although it was heavily upgraded and modified for the development of Amnesia. The game starts with the playable character waking up in a beautiful, dark and gloomy castle with complete amnesia, forgetting why he's there or who he even is. This castle seems to be completely empty. All you can hear is rainfall on the windows, and the only light sources present coming from a few lit candles and windows that show we're on a high level of the castle. The game doesn't fill the screen with any UI besides a small reticle to show you the middle of where you're looking and some control tips from time to time. As you get used to the simple controls and wander further, you see this mysterious red liquid splatter throughout the floors of the halls that sort of guides you further into the castle. Like Penumbra, you can pick up most of the smaller objects around the castle, but you can't use them as a weapon, you kinda just limply toss them around. One thing you'll immediately notice as you start to get deeper into the castle is just how well the sound design is. As we walk away from the sound of the loud rainfall on the windows and into more quiet darkness, we're able to pick up on many more sounds. The distant creaking of wood as you walk through the long corridors, making it feel like the walls are stretching as you press on. The heavy breath picking up from your character as you walk into dark halls, instilling this sense of shared fear between you and the playable character. The sounds of your knees hitting the ground as your character will stumble around in certain scenarios. And the chilling sound of wind blowing through objects and doors when you can't see where this wind could possibly be coming from. All of this mixes so well in your headphones to make for a horrifying but still pleasant to listen to experience. Following the mysterious liquid and the sounds of wind, you'll eventually approach a room and find the most important tool that you'll be using for the entire game: a simple lantern. The lantern will be your primary source of light throughout the game and requires oil to keep it lit up and working. You can find limited amounts of oil in portable containers or in large one-time use barrels around the castle. There's also several tinderboxes throughout the castle that you can pick up and store. These tinderboxes are one-time uses to light candles that are installed on walls in certain sections of the castle. These two sources of light will become increasingly useful as you venture deeper into the castle's dungeons, away from any outside light sources. I know what you're thinking though, can't I just turn the brightness all the way up? Do I really need some cringe-ass lantern just to get around? Fuck. There we go. The answer is yes. The lantern in Amnesia isn't just for seeing in the darker parts of the castle. If you've already opened up the inventory menu, you may have seen this brain icon in the bottom left titled Sanity. This icon is a meter letting you know what your current sanity level is, and your sanity will drop the more time you spend in the darkness. It'll also drop if you see or hear unexplainable things happening around you, but more on that later. As your sanity level drops, more and more negative things will start to happen to you. Your vision will become increasingly blurry, you'll start to hear sounds that aren't actually there, such as scratching noises on hard surfaces, or whispering noises close to your ear. You'll have visions of insects crawling around the floor of the room you're in, despite them not actually being there. The paintings on the walls of the castle will start to morph into disturbing imagery. Some of these effects can even mess with you as the player, as when your sanity is incredibly low, your mouse can get input lag, making it hard to look around and control your character, and the insects will start to crawl across your screen instead of the in-game environments. Sanity is especially important on the higher difficulties, as if it gets too low, you could actually die. Frictional Games took direct inspiration from Eternal Darkness for the GameCube, as it had a similar sanity mechanic, but Frictional wanted to take it and expand upon it greatly to specifically make darkness feel like a constant looming enemy. Once you're situated with the lantern, the next room you approach has a letter on the desk that provides some context to what's going on. The letter is titled Daniel's Note to Self from the 19th of August, 1839, and is a letter from you to you. The letter basically states that you, or Daniel as we now know his name to be, consumed some sort of amnesia potion for some reason. Daniel then tries to remind himself through this letter about his hate for a man named Alexander of Brennenburg, and how he must go to the inner sanctum of the castle and kill him, stating that this is his final effort to make things right. You'll soon find out that Alexander is actually the owner of the castle, which, god damn, he is chopped. The letter ends with, "Redeem us both, Daniel. Descend into the darkness where Alexander waits and murder him. Your former self, Daniel." Seems like a pretty simple story, right? This is a scene later in the game. I don't want to get any more into the story, as it's seriously something you guys should check out on your own, and I would hate to spoil the major story notes. The lore gets super deep with tons of twists and turns, and even some undertones of Lovecraftian horror. The way Daniel recalls things leading up to the start of the game as you explore new areas for the first time is done wonderfully, and this game even had my ADHD ass reading all of the lore notes scattered around and taking notes on them, and that is a rare feat for a game to have me do. Explaining the whole story would make this video like 3 hours long, and that's also just not what this video is about. Once you read this letter and have familiarized yourself with the core mechanics, the game basically stops holding your hand, and you end up in your first major hub area. These areas are pretty much the main milestones for the progression of the game, consisting of a Metroidvania style area with one goal or locked door in the middle, and several branching paths that you need to explore in order to get an item or a key so that you can return to the middle hub and unlock the next area. Thomas Grip of Frictional Games said in the developer commentary of Amnesia that these areas were inspired by the first Silent Hill game, stating that he wanted the player to feel the same sense of being lost when you're running around exploring the town of Silent Hill for the first time. He also stated that, unlike Silent Hill, it was important to not include any form of a map, as he felt constantly flipping to a map menu took away from immersion. Instead, the game forces you into reading most of the notes scattered about in the castle, as these notes can contain information about puzzles or where to go next. While you're free to explore the branching paths in these areas in any order you'd like, once you complete one of these hub areas, you won't ever need to come back to them, and the game just pushes you towards the next area, making the game pretty linear in that sense. In this first area, you'll see the main objective is to get rid of this strange, fleshy slime that's blocking you from descending further into the castle. In order to do this, you'll have to go into the wine cellar and lab that branch off from this area in order to find a way to break the fleshy substance. Through this, we'll have our first encounter with a creature and be shown that we're not alone in this castle. This comes from the wine cellar, which is the darkest area we've come across so far. As you reach the end of the cellar and pick up an item you need, this will happen. The humanoid creature at the end of the hall simply just lets you know of its presence, stalking you for a moment before it walks away, seeming to vanish from the cellar entirely. While it's not chasing after us now, that'll soon change as we further progress into the castle. If you remember when I was discussing sanity earlier, I said that there's something else that can drain it besides being in the dark. Looking for too long at a monster, or even hearing its grunts and screams, is the fastest way you can deplete your sanity meter. This sets up the dilemma in the player's head of, do I hide in the dark from the monster and risk losing my sanity? Or do I turn the lights on and risk the monster being able to spot me easier? This managing of environment and nearby light sources make for some incredible and unique gameplay moments. Through this first area, we're also shown a few different puzzles that are required in order to reach certain items or areas. This is where Frictional's HPL engine really shines, as most every puzzle in the game revolves around you picking up and toying with the physics of different objects. This could range from making holes in the walls using heavy objects, to placing different objects on top of one another in order for you to reach high places. Some of the puzzles throughout the game allow you to solve them in a few different ways using this physics engine, allowing for more creative freedom in problem solving. For example, there's a moment towards the end of the game where a chase scene occurs with a monster who unavoidably knocks you out. When you wake up, you notice the monster put you in a cell before walking away. You could actually go about escaping the cell in multiple different ways using the game's physics. You could keep pulling on this loose bar towards the top of the cell, breaking it off and drag this table under the hole, then simply hop through the bars. Or you could break off this piece towards the lower end of the jail cell, smash it repeatedly on the stone wall next to you to break it, and then jump through there. Or you could use this hammer item you collected earlier in the game to easily break the wall next to you as well. This type of remembering past items you've picked up as a way to solve puzzles is super reminiscent of those 2000s horror point-and-click flash games, and I personally love it. Once you progress through the first area after destroying the fleshy slime wall, you'll descend into the cellar archives, which are completely flooded in waist-high water. This is where you'll be shown another enemy type that'll be hunting you during your playthrough. There's actually only two enemy types present throughout Amnesia, the first being the Gatherers, which we were briefly shown a moment ago, and the second being exclusive to areas of the castle that are flooded with water. These enemies are called the Kerink. They cannot be physically seen at all by the player as they reside under the dark murky water, and the only way we know where they are is subtle splashes in the water indicating where they're heading next. All of the flooded areas with the Kerink present are actually super simple compared to the rest of the areas in the castle. They all consist of you simply needing to open a door at the end of a hallway and walking through to the next area. The Kerink make things difficult because if you're in the water for more than just a second, they'll splash towards you very swiftly and can kill you in just one hit. The way you navigate through these areas is once again by using the game's physics engine. You must use different tall objects throughout the environment to move while staying above the water. You can also throw objects in different directions to distract the Kerink for brief moments, but be careful as trying to stare at the water for too long for different splashes can lower your sanity very fast. The player base is a bit divided on how they feel about the Kerink as an enemy, as they feel a bit more gimmicky than the other monsters, but I think these areas are a good break between the other high-tense chase scenes, as they give you more time to methodically plan out how you'll sneak around. With most everything out of the way regarding the game itself, let's take a deeper look into the other type of danger that Amnesia is so well known for, and what really had the biggest influence on the world of horror. Remember that humanoid creature from the beginning that the game let us know is stalking us? Well, as you continue to explore Brenningburg Castle, These creatures will start to emerge and hunt you more and more in an attempt to stop you from reaching Alexander. Like I mentioned before, these creatures are called the Gatherers, and there are two different variations of the Gatherer, the Brute and the Grunt. These two variations don't act very differently, however, as both of them will hunt you in the same way. Typically the way this works is simple. You must obtain a key item to solve a puzzle and progress. This item will be in a large dark area with many rooms and places to hide. Once you enter this room, the Gatherer will emerge and hunt after you while you try to work your way around him, grabbing the item you need and escaping the area. This is the main bread and butter of Amnesia's gameplay and what set it so apart from everything else that was releasing during its time. There's no possible way to fight back against these monsters. The only thing you can do is run and hide. Even hiding makes you feel super vulnerable, as most of the hiding spots present throughout the game are things like closets with no real way to see out of them. All you can do is listen to the footsteps and droning ambience of the monster outside and pray it doesn't find you. Once you're in a chase and a Gatherer does catch up to you, all it takes is only 2 hits from them in order to kill you. Mix that with the sanity mechanic not allowing you to stay hidden in the dark for too long or even look at the monsters themselves for too long, and this creates one of the most tense games of hide and seek you could possibly play. In the developer commentary for Amnesia, Frictional Games stated that they took what they learned from the bare-bones chase scenes from the Penumbra series and decided to expand greatly upon them. They learned from player feedback that those who enjoyed the chase scenes in Penumbra completed them on their first try, and those who didn't enjoy them failed on their first try. This was because the chase scenes were very formulaic and linear, consisting of just one set corridor that you need to run down to escape the monster. The solution to this was creating these larger circular areas with multiple branching rooms where monsters were pathed to different locations, leading to no 2 chases ever being the same. Frictional was very worried about the player failing too much and leading to the player feeling frustrated instead of fearful. There's nothing more immersion breaking in a game than dying over and over again, forcing you to restart the same area multiple times. The way Frictional dealt with this was actually by having the monsters despawn in an area if you hid for long enough. The time in which it takes for a threat to despawn is completely inconsistent and random. This is because Amnesia doesn't want to kill you, it wants you to keep fearing the unknown. An excellent example of this is there's several moments throughout the game where grabbing a key item will cause a Gatherer to break into the room you're in. When this happens, you must quickly jump into the closest hiding spot and wait for the Gatherer to leave the room. Like I mentioned before, you can't actually see out of these hiding spots, and it's completely random when the Gatherer will leave the room. This forces you to very carefully listen to your surroundings to finally build up the courage to come out of hiding. When you do come out from hiding, it's never made clear if the monster fully left or not. This leads to you scared and sneaking around a room that may not even have a monster in it at all. This kind of using your own imagination against you is the best of Amnesia's horror. The trend of constant jump scares in horror media is not only lazy, but in a way it takes the fear out by giving you a sort of cool down between jump scares. After a tense scene that leads up to a jump scare, you pretty much know you have some time to catch your breath and be calm. Amnesia is the complete opposite of this. It wants to keep you constantly on the edge of your seat without ever kicking the chair out from under you, leading to a constant feeling of tension and terror. This type of hide-and-seek game design is the most influential thing to come out of Amnesia, however there's one more thing that would boost its influence even more. "2011 was still a very early time for YouTube, and it looked a whole lot different from what it looks like today. During this time, it seemed like the virality of a video was completely random, with everyone trying all sorts of things to see what sticks. There was one thing that pretty much worked without fail though. People just loved watching other people get scared. By the turn of the decade, creators were already flirting with the idea of recording themselves playing games with their own commentary. It would seem like a really good idea to record yourself playing a hot new scary game to go viral, but like we spoke about towards the beginning of this video, horror games were just not scary from this time. The action horror games from this time just don't give you the same vicarious adrenaline rush that you get when you watch someone be genuinely scared at something. That's when Amnesia The Dark Descent would release at the perfect time. You had the fresh and actually scary hide-and-seek chase gameplay loop of Amnesia, mixed with the overreacting YouTube personalities that would record themselves playing it. This was a match made in heaven and would kickstart so many of the biggest YouTube names that we know today. It would also single-handedly start the Let's Play as a popular form of content. I guess watching the funny Swedish twink screaming at Amnesia and giving a fake voice to a chair really made people realize they desire more content of different personalities playing through games. There was a sort of huge symbiotic relationship between Amnesia and PewDiePie in specific. As PewDiePie would release his webcam playthrough of Amnesia, not only would he see rapid growth on his channel, but Amnesia itself would have rapid growth, which boosted sales and made other YouTubers want to create content of them playing it. Amnesia's director Thomas Grip stated in a 2015 interview, "I think Amnesia got a lot of free PR because of Let's Play videos, but I also think that Amnesia opened people to a new style of Let's Play. Normally, games are very skill-based. You need to be concentrated and play a certain way to play properly. But with horror games, the aim is not to win, but rather to get immersed. That gives a lot more space for Let's Players to put on a show, either by being very scared or just fooling about." I didn't mention this, but Amnesia had something called custom stories that were player-made mods and levels using the game's engine and posted to a tab on the main menu. These would be extensively played by these popular creators at the time, but would eventually become dull, and by the time 2012 rolled around, what were these content creators gonna play to keep their momentum going? That's when we would see Amnesia finally have its influence shine on game developers and fully shift the landscape of horror games. It did take a bit more time for larger studios to adapt, but it seemed like indie developers would shift their games' directions just within a few months of Amnesia's rapid success. The first monumental case of this came just from one indie developer named Mark Hadley, who took huge inspiration from Amnesia's atmospheric tension and gameplay loop and mixed it with a popular creepypasta story from the time. Slender the 8 Pages is usually a game that people look to when they think of some of the most influential pieces of online horror, not even knowing that Amnesia is the main inspiration behind the game. That's not to say the game wasn't good in its own fashion, as I love this game personally and I have a ton of nostalgia for it. I mean, I'm 6'3", 180 pounds, I'm even built like the guy. The creator of Slender the 8 Pages stated in an interview with the University Observer, "I got the inspiration from the game Amnesia The Dark Descent, which puts the player in a helpless situation. I like the idea of not being able to fight back because it adds more dread and makes the stretches of time where nothing is happening seem scary." And that's exactly what Slender does best in replicating Amnesia. It's a very simple game gameplay-wise. You're in a large dark area completely defenseless, and you must find a certain number of items while being stalked and hunted by a horrifying entity. The success of this game and its impact on YouTube and internet horror is something I can't even put into words. I mean, there was a time that Slender the 8 Pages was getting more Google visits than the Buffalo Bills. This would cause hundreds of copycat games throughout the 2010s, with even big game studios getting in on the hype of creating the next Amnesia-like game. This poses an interesting question. Were these games being created with actual passion, or were they just being lazily and formulaically put together to become the next big internet horror game? This question has led to people online getting upset at Amnesia and blaming it for this current day slopfest of games created solely for the purpose of getting creators to make viral clips of them playing it. Throughout the years, some people go as far as to credit Amnesia for some of the internet horror content that's not related to gaming. I thought this was a bit of a stretch at first, but looking back at some of the atmospheric horror series from the past decade, it could be possible that Amnesia had influence on those as well. A ton of them are framed the exact same way. Little to no prior context to the story, A defenseless first-person perspective walking through a large, unfamiliar, tension-filled atmosphere, and an opposing entity that stalks and chases them. Whether or not all this impact on internet horror culture was a good or a bad thing, is for you to decide. But there's no doubting that Amnesia: The Dark Descent changed not only horror games, but also internet horror forever.